Right, good morning. It's Mr. Kruan. We are doing history today, and the theme that we will be focusing on will be the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I will do the first part, and then I will give over to Mr. Kumari. You guys must all remember that this theme, now with the new CAPS document or curriculum, that it will only be source-based questions that will come out of this theme, and no more essays. Right, and then if I can start with the PowerPoint, the introduction. Why was there the need for the TRC? What happened in South Africa before 1994? Now, as you all know, there were decades of oppression. We had apartheid, where there was lots of cases of violence, of people being murdered, lots of violence by the police. And in the early 1990s, South Africa, with the release of Mandela and F de Klerk, which released him, they started negotiating. And in 1994, as you all know, Nelson Mandela was elected as the first democratically elected president of South Africa, and he had to find a way in which we can deal with all these acts of violence that which they were in the past. We had our post 1994, South Africa was faced with the challenge of how to deal with the past and face the future. Do we just go into the future and not talk about the past, or how do we do it? And he then started with the TRC with the help of Desmond Tutu and Alex Bourain. I will talk about them just a bit later. They say that the National Party government was determined to hold on to power, but the liberation movement were equally determined to wrestle power away from the government. This NP government relied on the army, the police, and sometimes on other hand tactics to withhold their power. That is why the army and the police were responsible for lots of acts of violence during apartheid, especially if we look at the last few years, as we look at the 1980s and especially in the 1990s, where it was becoming much more difficult for the government to continue with apartheid, and lots of deaths which then occurred in the 1990s especially. The liberals employed sabotage and sporadic attacks on hard targets to force the government to relinquish power. The situation was a recipe for conflict, and many people were victimized by the violence emancipating from this conflict. Right. Just some examples of the violence or the conflict which there were. Many of them included the police brutality across the country. For example, Sharpeville, which were there in 1960, and Sowetan also in 1976. And then there were several other massacres. There were train violence on the trains, offended by the security personnel. We will also look a lot at the third force which they were, where they criticized the government, the ANC, which criticized the government of having an alliance with the IFP, and giving them money and sometimes even weapons to attack ANC members. There was tortures, there were assassinations, there were abductions, people even vanishing into thin air. You will see many times through the TRC they discovered graves of people which they never even knew what happened to the people. The people just vanished, and their family didn't know which happened to them. And then through the TRC, the perpetrators came, and they then came forward and told the commission where did they bury these people, and these people were then able to give them the proper funerals and so forth. There was also letter and parcel bombs, where some other crucial factors started the establishment of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. There was also, they had to look at the liberation movements, the ANC, Zapiro, and the PIC, which had a good agenda, but were also guilty of gross human rights violation and atrocities which were committed in their camps in exile. And the important thing with the TRC is that they decided that atrocities or gross human rights violation is a gross human rights violation. It doesn't matter from which side it came. If it came from the government or if it came from the liberation movement, they treated it equally. In the court, everyone was equal. Examples of the liberation movements of their acts of violence included bomb attacks in Durban, also the St. James's Church attack, which were in Cape Town, where 11 people were killed. Others included violence against black people, councillors, and people associated with government in townships. Right, important places which you will deal with if you look at the TRC. The first one there being Khotso House is where there was the headquarters of the ANC. And then there was Vlakplaas. A lot of ANC members were captured and they were taken there. They were tortured there. Very prominent figures like Eugene de Kok. He was one of the policemen at Vlakplaas. Also Dirk Coetzee, who acted these acts of violence and tortured the people and sometimes even murdering them. Then we look at Sharpeville, where there was where it was organized by Robert Sobukwe, the PAC on the day. They marched to Sharpeville. The plan was to march without their passbooks, peacefully, and then what happened is that the police started to shoot on them, and many people which were killed there, 69 people which were killed there innocently, and the big thing there is that most of them were shot in the back. So they were actually running away from the police, and then they were killed. So they had to look at those incidents there as well. Then Soweto, we all know Soweto with the uprising where the students marched, and police also marched peacefully, and the police started shooting on them. I think all of us know about Hector Peterson there, who was shot there. I know that his sister was one of the people also which appeared before the TRC. And then we get to Bishu, Sebokeng, Boipatong. These were all much later on during apartheid, places that in the townships that there was also violence. And this was, all of them were acts of violence where they said that it was the government which were involved in this third force violence with the IFP. And then we have to look at how do we deal with the past. What do we do as South Africans, because many countries have a history of gross human rights violations, and each country has a different way of dealing with it. Now, the first one there being an eye for an eye. So what you did to us, do we now do the same to you? Or the second one, do we let bygones be bygones? Let all of this which happened, that we just leave it there in the past, and we just see that it doesn't happen again? Do we forgive and forget? Or do we settle old scores? Like I've said, with also with an eye for an eye, where what you have done to me now, I will then also do it to you. Then and being bogged down by the past, that we cannot be, that our past determine our future, that we have to find a way of coming over the past, leaving it there. We never forget about it, but we go into the future, right? And South Africa, when they started with the TRC, they looked at some countries where there were atrocities, where there were gross human rights violations. For example, there you can see it's Argentina, Germany, Chile, and Uganda. These countries are some of the 40 countries that had the same commissions across the world before the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission was established. But the TRC of South Africa was unique in the sense of conducting public hearings. Everyone was able to attend the hearings, and also we had a process of amnesty, giving those perpetrators, pardoning them from their crimes which they committed if they met certain if they met certain demands, then we will excuse them. Important concepts when we get to this TRC, we have the mandates. It's an instruction on how to act. Now the TRC had a mandate in according to which it had to work. Then we had the human rights violations. It refers to the killing, abducting, torturing or severe ill treatment of any person. Like I would say again, is that it didn't matter from which side it came. If it was from the government or it was from the liberation movement, it didn't matter. They treated all of those cases equally. When we also talk about the TRC, we don't talk about whites always being the perpetrators, black being the victims, that it sometimes could have even turned around, that we just talk about perpetrators and we talk about victims. Amnesty, very important, the pardon of any punishment and officially forgiven for what you have done wrong. The protection from prosecution to those voluntarily disclosed all politically motivated violations of human rights. Then the compensation, very important, or reparation, payment in money. It was an amount of 30,000 rand, which were paid to these victims or to their families as a way of acknowledging that that we take recognition of what has happened to them. Then the rehabilitation to restore to normality and act of therapy and healing. I believe with the TRC, many people had to be taught how to live in a new South Africa, where everyone is equal, where there is no advantages that the one race has over another, and much of that hate what people had for each other. Also, that is also rehabilitating people, that we don't make assumptions like, but this person did that, so all those people, for example, this one black person murdered someone of my family. Now I say that all of them are that way. Those people, we had to change people's mindsets and their way of feeling about each other. Right, then also another concept is the reconciliation, restore friendly relations between former enemies, and I believe this was the essence of our Truth and Reconciliation Commission, is that we wanted those people who were enemies to forgive each other and let they be able to live together. Then the different forms of justice, we have restorative justice and we have retributive justice. Now, if we take South Africa and we take the TRC, we had restorative justice where there was healing and reconciliation. Retributive justice, it is revengeful, it is to punish the perpetrators. And here you can look at Germany with the Nazis. They had hearings where they sentenced those people. In our case with the TRC, we didn't always sentence them. It was very important for us, for anyone that was a victim, to be healed, and for those enemies to reconcile, to forgive each other. Then the perpetrators or the violators, it was those people who committed crimes or acts of violence of human rights. Anyone could have been a perpetrator. It didn't depend on, some of them were in the police, some of them were in the liberation movement. It didn't matter. Anyone who might have tortured someone, who might have killed someone, was a perpetrator or violator then. And then our victims were those people who suffered abuse, and they also came from all sides of the country. I believe most of the victims would have been women, but also you got a lot of men, because the women, many of the men were abducted by the government and tortured by the government, sometimes even killed, and then they had to appear before the TRC to find out what happened to their loved ones, and also to get answers onto why did that happen. I think that is also a very important thing with the TRC, is that they wanted, the victims wanted answers for why people did certain things to them or did certain things to their families, right? The work of the TRC was established in 1995 in terms of the National Unity Act and Reconciliation Act. They had 17 commissioners, which were led by Archbishop Desmond Tutu, which was the chairperson, and then we had Alex Borain as his vice, purposely to document the truth about the past. They had to document everything. At the end of the day, they had to give this to the president of the country. I think choosing Desmond Tutu as the chairperson just shows that the TRC was all about reconciliation, about forgiveness. I don't think they could have chosen a better person if they wanted the country to heal and they wanted the people to forgive each other. It had the same power, the TRC had the same power as the court of law, could subpoena any person to appear before it. Right. The works of the TRC, the mandate, what did the mandate have to do? It was to investigate gross human rights violations which occurred from 1960 up until, I believe it was March 1960, up until April 1994. So any acts of violence which occurred before that were not supposed to appear before the TRC. That was the only time period that they could focus on, and this in itself was also challenging because we now had to look at more than 30 years of gross human rights violations. And I can say that not all of the atrocities and violations that there were appeared before the TRC, even though they tried to narrow it down, saying only from 1960 up until 1994. Then it also had to identify victims and the nature of abuses that which they suffered, so that not anyone just came forward to the TRC and claimed to be a victim. Then they only had to investigate incidents which were politically motivated, that it had a political connection, maybe either being from the liberation movement or being from in the government or so, but that it was definitely politically motivated and not just an act of violence which they were. For example, if we can look at the death of Chris Hani, there we had Clive Derby Lewis and Johannes Wallis. Clive Derby Lewis gave the gun to him to kill Chris Hani, and they were never able, the two of them were never able to show that their crime was politically motivated. They act out of their own will. And then the mandate also had to grant amnesty to deserving perpetrators. Certain conditions had to be met. For example, like they say at the top, it had to be in that time period from 1960 up until 1994, and also it had to be politically motivated. And then lastly, the mandate had to give compensation to deserving victims. It was 30,000 rand. It's quite a substantial amount of money, and they couldn't just have given to anyone claiming to be a victim that money. Right, the aims of the TRC, right, the first aim being healing. Many people that were very much hurt during the past, during apartheid, and they had to be healed. And they say Desmond Tutu have the saying that healing is speaking, and for them to have talked about it for the first time, someone is actually listening to them. For the previous 30 years, no one wanted or no one listened to them. It helped them just to talk about the things that happened to them. And then the reconciliation is again that forgiveness that we wanted to achieve. Also to live together, to reconcile two former enemies coming together, forgiving each other, and even being able to live in to live side by side in the future. And then the forgiveness, it was the TRC, one of their aims was for the victims to forgive the perpetrators, something which some of them found hard, I know there was some cases where the victims never forgave the perpetrators, but then there was other cases where there was actually true forgiveness that took place. And then nation building, we had to build a new nation, a nation that was so divided through the past, through apartheid and all the crimes that were committed there, that we now had to build a new nation with all the different people, all the different races, which will have to come together and not seeing each other's skin color anymore, but really that is why Nelson Mandela was so important, to bring all those different groups of people which were divided once together. And the TRC also helped a lot with that, with the help of someone like Desmond Tutu. And then this TRC was restorative in nature. The focus was on restoring the dignity of the victim, to get your dignity back from all those things that happened to you in the past. Right, and then I'm just going to touch on the one committee of the TRC, and then I will give over, is that the first one being the Human Rights Violations Committee, that was made up of 10 commissioners and 10 committee members. Desmond Tutu again being the chairperson with his 2 deputies, Yasmin Zuka and Wynand Malan. The human rights violations was entrusted to hear victims' stories in order to establish whether gross violations of human rights had occurred. So the Human Rights Violations Committee had to determine whether a victim is entitled to receive compensation or they're not. This gave platform for victims to meet with their violators. They say with the TRC many times it was the first time where victims and perpetrators came face to face, and the victims were given the opportunity to ask the perpetrators, but why did you do this? Then the people got to hear how much violence had taken place in the previous decades. I believe that many of the violence which happened during apartheid, many people didn't know about, and with the TRC, all of this became known to the public for the first time. So it really gave a opportunity for the whole world to actually take recognition of just how violent apartheid was, where many of the people, they didn't know what was going on underground and so forth, and this was many people for the first time actually heard about how which act of violence and so they were. Right, I would now like to give over to Mr. Kumari.
Hi everyone, how are you? Fine. I'm Kumari. As my colleague has already indicated, I'll be taking you through the second structure of the TRC and the third structure of the TRC. From there, the report of the TRC that was handed over to the president of the country. From there, we'll look at as to whether the TRC was successful or not. Then from there, we'll look at 2-3 sources, because I want to believe that most of our learners, they really struggle with the sources. But now let me take you through the second committee of the TRC. The second committee of the TRC was known as the Amnesty Committee. And what was the work or the function of what call of this committee? The work of this committee was to listen to the application of what call of the violators. They have to apply to say that I'm sorry for what I did during apartheid. Now that was the work of what call of this committee, to listen to those stories of what call of the violators, and then for them to be given what call amnesty. There are 3 requirements, and if they are successful, then they'll be given what call amnesty. But now if they are not successful, then obviously they'll not be given what call amnesty. Now the first requirement that is needed from the violators, they have to disclose everything that they did during apartheid. And there must be what called an evidence The second requirement, the case, it has to be politically motivated. The mandate of the commission was to listen to cases which are politically motivated. Then if your case has got nothing to do with politics, then that was not the responsibility of the commission to listen to that case. The last requirement, your case should be within this period of 1960 to April 1994. Then these are three requirements that are applicable to the violators. Then if they met what called those requirements, then they'll be given what called an amnesty. The last committee, let me pass this source, we'll come back to the sources as I've indicated. The last committee, that is Reparation and Rehabilitation Committee. This committee, it offers emotional support to victims, to witnesses, and also perpetrators. You'll remember that our commission was open for everyone. Now, it was not only the violators and and the victims, but also the witness or public was also allowed to attend, to listen to the stories of of our people, how they were violated, how they were brutalized during apartheid. Now, because of the past, people were affected. Not only the victims were affected by the past, but even the perpetrators themselves, they were affected because now they've been carrying this burden all these years. Now, this committee was there to give them emotional support. And also the victims, they were given the emotional support. And also the witness, because now some of them, they were shocked. You'll remember during the cross human rights violation, people, they have to witness, they have to listen to to the stories. Then obviously people, they were affected by the past. And the other thing of this committee is that the victims, they were given a once-off reparation of 30,000. A once-off 30,000 reparation then was given to the victims just to say sorry for your loss or sorry for what you experienced during apartheid. Now, that is how the commission operates. Now here I have example of well-known cases of human rights abuses. These are some of the people who were abused during apartheid. We have people like Mefu Goniwe, who was a school teacher, or the so-called the grade 4. We have Sparom Kondo, we have Fos Galata, Skalom Mhlaulu, who was a school principal. These are some of the people who were abused or who were killed during apartheid. Other people, we've got what you call the Pepco 3, Sipo Hashe, Champion Galela, Gaula Godolozi. And also the cases of of people like Steve Bantubiko. You'll remember one of the great leaders this country has ever had. He was also killed during apartheid, even though the family of Biko was not happy at all with the TRC process, as they opposed to the TRC, because now they believe that they've been robbed of justice. And also the Pilandande case, you'll remember how she was killed by the police. Now these are some of the cases which were listened during the TRC commission. From there, as my colleague has indicated, one of the responsibility of the commission was to hand over the report. And they were given a mandate to say that from 1996 to 1998, then you should be done with everything. Then yes, in 1998, Desmond Tutu hands over the report to the president. Then it was found out that 7,000 applicants for amnesty were saying who appeared before the commission and asking for for amnesty. But unfortunately, as I've indicated, that you must pass the requirements. I've talked about what called the whole truth, that your case has to be politically motivated, and it must be within this limit of 1960 to 1994. Now, out of 7,000, only 1,000 were granted amnesty. Obviously, the rest, 6,000, they did not qualify for amnesty. And the report also, it criticized the liberation movement. The ANC, PAC, AZAPO, they were also found to have been involved in the gross human rights violation. Even though the ANC, it was not happy at all with the report. Now, because now they were implicated in the report. They wanted to justify what they did during apartheid. But unfortunately, Desmond Tutu, he defended the TRC by saying that violence is violence. Whether you're a member of ANC or one of the security police. But now what is important is that you were also involved in the atrocities of what call of the past. And also the National Party agent also, government also of the apartheid government, they also happened to be found that they were involved in the gross human rights violation. De Klerk also, he tried to oppose what called the report, but unfortunately, the report was handed over to the president of what call of the country, irrespective whether the National Party or de Klerk was not happy at all. And then from there, after the report, now let us look as to whether was the TRC successful in their mission or not. Remember, the aim of the TRC was to listen to the cases, to find the truth about the past, and also was to reconcile the South African, and also was to heal South Africa, to unite South Africa. And I'm not sure, you'll be a judge, whether TRC was successful in their mission or not. But some of the limitation of the commission was that the time that was given, 2 years, it was not enough. Too limited time frame. You'll remember from 1996 to 1998. Obviously, some cases really, there was no time for the TRC to listen to their cases. Meaning that the duration of 2 years was really too short. And also on the question of reparation, remember I've said that people, they were given what called a once-off compensation of 30,000. For some people, 30,000, it was not enough. How much is enough? 100,000 is enough? Can $1 million be enough? But Desmond Tutu, when he was defending the TRC, he said that no amount of money can be enough for what our people went through. So now this was just to say that sorry for what you experienced during apartheid. And the other thing is that not all deserving families got compensation. Some families who deserve to have been given what called to have been compensated, they were not compensated at all. Even today, as we speak, they're still waiting for the compensation. Others, they were promised the 30,000, but they were not given that 30,000. They were given less, the money that was promised before. And the other thing that is the scope, remember the TRC was given the mandate to listen to cases which are politically motivated. But now you will find that some cases, people, they were tortured, but now their cases were not politically motivated. So unfortunately, the TRC was also blamed for that, was also criticized to say that, but some cases were not politically motivated. But the bottom line is people, they were tortured, people, they were abused. Now, in those cases, then that was not the responsibility of the commission. Other people, they also blame the commission to say that The commission is perpetrator friendly, meaning that it is too soft on the perpetrators. That is why amnesty to other people, they say that it was easily gettable. People, they've killed innocent people and they rush to the commission, they disclose everything, thereafter they are given what you call, they are given amnesty. And the other thing that is important that we have to know is that once the committee has decided that this person qualifies for what you call for amnesty, then it means the person is protected. You cannot open any case against that particular person. Other people, they were also saying that the TRC was opening the healing wounds. You'll remember, it was listening to cases which occurred from 1960 to 1994. Now, if the TRC has to, or the violators, they have to explain how they killed some of the victims, some of the incidents that occurred in 1960. The families has accepted that what occurred during apartheid is that. But now, during the commission, some of the violators, then they came forward and they have to explain. Now, to some of the families, it is like it was opening the healing wounds. Now they have to start from the scratch. They have to cry because now they have to listen to the cases of how their beloved family members were killed during apartheid. Now, these are some of the criticism of what call of the TRC. In some cases, people, they were saying that UNDERWENT could pass off as truth. You'll remember the victims during the cross human rights violation, they were not severely cross-questioned. Now, it is possible that at times, UNDERWENT could pass off as truth. And that is possible. Now, some people, they were criticizing the commission. We've already said that people, they said that the commission, it was too soft on the perpetrators. And the other thing, you'll remember, the TRC was consisting of how many commissioners? 17. Then, obviously, it was not enough for them to listen to all cases across the country. Now, because of limited staff, some cases, they were not given attention at all. They were not given enough time on certain cases. Some of them, they were not addressed at all. In some cases, few or limited time, and they ended up not really coming up with what call with the truth about the past. In some cases, it was difficult for the commission to prove that the cases were politically motivated. But now, at the end of the day, the commission, it has to come up with something, whether they grant that person an amnesty or not. Because now it was difficult to prove that this case is politically motivated or not. And also, as I've indicated in the report, the National Party, it also criticized the report. It was not happy at all with the report, and de Klerk, he even went further to say that this commission is what called is a witch hunt, meaning that it was only looking at the atrocities committed by what call by the whites or by the National Party agent. Now that is why it de Klerk, he criticized what they call the report, and also the ANC. They also criticized the report, as I've indicated, that they believe that what they did, it was because of apartheid. It was not their intention to be involved in the cross human rights violation. Now that is why they criticize the commission. And some people, they totally refuse to give evidence. You'll remember people like P.W. Botha and some of the top dogs or top officials of what call of the ANC. They totally never appeared before the commission to testify. Now that is why the commission was criticized. Now let us also look at the success of the TRC. The TRC, it provided platform for truth-telling. Yes, the truth indeed came out about the past. That is why when you look at the report, it was found that the ANC, the liberation movement, the National Party agent, the security police, they were involved in in the killing of of our people. It was because of of the commission. That is why the truth came out. In some cases, healing was made possible because some of the family members, they were happy to know that their family members were killed by the security police or they were killed by the liberation movement, and they accepted that. The secret graves were discovered. You'll remember in the case of Pilandwande, the police who were behind the killing of Pilandwande, they came forward and identified what you call the grave. Then she was given a proper burial. You'll remember one of the aims of the TRC was to reconcile, was to restore the dignity of our own people. Now, in this case of Pilandwande, she was buried by the family. Compensation was also offered, as I've indicated, that people, they were given something like 30,000. Yes. Some people, they were happy with that amount of 30,000. In some cases, amnesty was also given to our own people, those who were honest, who disclosed everything, and people, they were able to move on. And the other thing is that reconciliation was also made possible. If you remember the story of the Mamelodi 10, the widow of Mamelodi 10, the story of Frank Chikani, you'll remember that Gideon Nivout, who attempted to kill Frank Chikani, he appeared before the commission and asked for forgiveness. And Frank Chikani, he did not hesitate, but he said that you are forgiven. That shows that reconciliation was made possible. And he even went to the extent of washing the feet of Frank Chikani. And in some cases, the TRC, it brought relief to those who told their stories. As I've indicated, that people, they were carrying the burden of of the past. But once the truth came out, at least to them, it was some sort of of a relief, and they were happy with that. Now, before I could conclude, let us go back to the sources. As I've indicated that I will also take you through the sources. Now, the reason for us to look at the sources is because we have realized that our learners, they really struggle with the source-based questions. Because now they have this tendency, or they believe that a source is everything. All the answers, they should be in the source. And of which is not like that. Questions can be categorized into three. We have level 1, we have level 2, and level 3. Now, level 1, that is the simple question that needs extraction. And in most cases, mark allocation can either be 1 or 2. Then from there, we have analysis and interpretation. Mark allocation can be 2, 3, or 4. Then from there, the complex one, that is level 3, that is comparison. And let us go through this source quickly. And then I have the simple question, or the level 1 questions from this source. This source, the focus is on how the TRC undertook its work. The format chosen for the public hearings produced further controversy. In recounting their stories, victims were to be allowed to name perpetrators, provided that the perpetrators had been given sufficient warnings. But the victims themselves were not to be subjected to any severe or rigorous cross-examination, as would happen in court of law. The Commission wanted to ensure a friendly environment in which victims could relate their ordeals or sufferings without fear of interrogation. That testimony would thus be largely untested by the normal rules of evidence. The risk was that a flawed or a false version of the truth might emerge. This was a serious concern about how much importance would be attached to victims' evidence of events 10 or 20 years distant. A leading academic, Tom Lodge, stressed the pitfalls of the oral history, corrupted as it often was by flaws in memory. Lodge warned of the danger that the TRC might corrupt or degenerate into untruth commission. Now this is our source, and I'm going to give you few questions from this source which are level 1 question. And then the second source, the questions will be on level 2 question. Now here are our questions from this film. Use your own knowledge and the source to explain what is meant by public hearing. What do you understand by public hearing? Now, if you go through this, you'll realize that from our source, you may pick something from the source that can lead you to answer what you call this question. And I'm not going to give you an answer as to what is a public hearing, but I'm expecting an answer from you. But what I'm saying, the answer is from this source. The second one, how did the TRC differ from a normal court of law in the way it treated the victims of political crimes during apartheid? How did TRC differ from the normal court of law in the way it treated the victims of political crimes during apartheid? Now again, the answer is there in the source. If you could go through the source, you'll then realize how the TRC treat what you call the victims. The answer is right there in the source. Now these questions, they require what you call extraction. Again, question number 3 also. According to the source, there was a risk that a flawed or a false version of truth might emerge. There are 3 reasons, and those reasons, once again, they are right there in the source. Yours is to spot or is to look for the answer in the source. But now look at the last question. Last question is different from question 1, 2, 3. And this question is a level 2 question. Explain whether Tom Lodge's criticism of the TRC was justified. Now in this case, you have to choose. You have to either justify or say that you justify the criticism or not justified. So now I was just trying to show you that we have level 1 question and level 2 question. Now in this case, the last question, you have to judge. After reading the source, you have to make what you call your judgment. Do you agree with Tom Lodge that it was good for him to criticize the commission? Now it's up to you to decide. But now the first 3 questions, the answers are right there in the source. Now, we have level 1 question, level 2 question. That is analysis and interpretation. That is our first source. Here is our second source. This is a cartoon by Zapiro, which appeared in Sunday Times on 2nd August 1998. And the source, it depicts the amnesty process of the TRC. It is taken from Truth and Reconciliation in South Africa, 10 years on by F du Toit. Now, do you see what is happening in our source? We have this figure, Desmond Tutu. You should have seen the ones that got away. That is Desmond Tutu. Finally, a big one. Now, this guy, I want to believe, should be Bulelani Ngcuka. And then from there, the amnesty process. Now, that is the amnesty process. Now, Desmond Tutu, he was saying that others, they've got away. In other words, the amnesty, it could not get hold of others. Now, you see this figure, I think he's well known, that is de Klerk, P.W. Botha, or Peg Botha, if I'm not mistaken. Other figures, I could not identify them. But now, let us go through our questions again. Look at the first question. What message does the cartoon convey? We have this source. Now, what is the message behind this cartoon? What do you think is the message of this cartoon? Don't you think that the aim of the cartoon is to show us the process of the TRC? Don't you think the message of the cartoon, Desmond Tutu is trying to show us that others, prominent leaders, they got away? Don't you think this figure is trying to show us that the TRC, it also managed to get hold of the big fish, some of the prominent figures who appeared before the commission? Now, this question is an extraction. Let us look at question number 2. Explain whether the cartoonist accurately captures the work of the TRC. Now, in this case, learners are expected to look at the source before coming to a conclusion. Do you think that this cartoon is relevant to the work of the TRC? Do you think that it depicts the work of what call of the TRC? Then, if yes, then you'll say, yes, the cartoonist is accurate. Then if this cartoonist is not accurate, then you'll indicate that the cartoonist is not accurate. If I may give you the answer for this question number 2, the first one on the question of what call of accuracy. Yes, I can say, yes, this cartoonist is accurate, because now it shows us the process of what call, or the work of what call, of the TRC. Remember, some people, they did not appear. Now, Desmond Tutu, he was trying to say that some people, they got away. People like P.W. Botha, those who refused to appear before the commission. And not only P.W. Botha, and some high prominent figures from the ANC and the National Party, they did not appear before the commission. Yes, then, learners, you can say that this source really is accurate. But on the other hand, others, they can also say, no, it is not accurate. then you must provide your own reasons why you are saying that the source is not, or this cartoon is not accurate. Look at this. You should, finally, a big one. Even some of the high profile, high prominent leaders, they did appear before the commission. Therefore, one can say, to me, this is not accurate, because some prominent leaders, they did appear before the commission. Then in that case, others, they can say the source is not accurate. That was question number 2. The last question, explain to what extent do you agree with Tutu's statement. You should have seen the ones that got away. Do you agree with this statement? Again, in this case, you have to indicate whether you agree with the statement or not. The choice is yours. But you must provide reasons why you say you agree with the statement or you do not agree with the statement. Then let me take you through the last source. Here is the last source. The following cartoon, which focuses on reparations and perpetrators dealt with at the TRC, appeared in Sowetan 24 October 1997. I killed for apartheid. Now I suffered post-traumatic stress. I killed and tortured. Everyone hates me. Say here, sniff and hate myself. The last part, the TRC reparations. Now you could see the violators also, those who were involved in the killing. They also appeared before the last committee, that is the Reparation and Rehabilitation Committee. Now let us read at this caption. This, everyone a victim of apartheid, thing is getting out of hand. The lady is saying that everyone is a victim of apartheid. Now quickly, let us go through our questions. What message does the cartoon convey regarding the TRC? What do you see in this cartoon? Now you'll realize that everyone is a victim. Not only the violators, not only the victims, even the perpetrators. They regard themselves as what called as victims. How accurate is the cartoonist portrayal relating to the TRC event? Then once again, can you truly say that the cartoonist portray the relevant events of what call of the TRC? Once again, you will decide to say that accurate or not accurate. The last two questions, what do you understand by the TRC? What do you understand by the TRC reparation? What is reparation? I think my colleague has talked about reparation. Comment on the significance of the chairperson words. Everyone is a victim. Now finally, some people believe that the TRC was essential for nation building. Others question this idea. You, what do you think? Do you think that the TRC was essential for nation building or not? But let me conclude by saying that reconciliation requires space, time, capacity to contain strong feelings such as mourning, anger, hate, and healing. Reconciliation involves a lot of talking in order to gain a deeper understanding of others. It involves sharing how we remember things. Without reconciliation, the future is bleak for all of us. I think we have come to the conclusion of our presentation. And I hope that you have enjoyed this presentation. Hope to see you next time. Thank you very much.